So, Martin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me. Glad I can finally be on.
Yes, 4 years.
Two years.
Yeah, well, a lot of people don't know I've been pestering Martin for the last couple of years to come on, but it'll be worth the wait, I'm sure. And Martin, I start off every podcast by putting you in the hot seat to ask you what it is that you do in 10 seconds or less.
Oh, geez, wow. Okay. Can I have some thinking time first before my 10 starts?
I'll give you 5 seconds.
Okay, great. 10 seconds or less. Right. Are you starting the clock?
3, 2, we're gone.
So in 10 seconds, I am currently an educator, predominantly online, as we've just been talking about. And evidence-based nutrition is kind of me through and through, getting that through to people to help them in all different areas: performance nutrition, clinical nutrition, weight loss nutrition. There you go. How's that? That
wasn't 10 seconds.
That's 10 seconds. I wasn't going to abuse the time limit.
No, but you did. That was 20. No, perfect. Yeah, and just for anybody that doesn't know Martin, I think you first came on the scene, Martin, for me through Daniel Lennon's podcast, all nutritional based. And the biggest eye opener for me personally from day one was just getting straight through the shit when it comes to nutritional sciences and how to break that down into easy, takeaway, practical terms. Because it's what we do day in, day out here at Doc Fitness for our clients. It's just breaking down the complicated stuff so you can actually do something with it. And not even just saying, a calorie deficit is what we need. It's giving practical elements along with that. And I suppose the first before we pigeonhole into the topics we're going to cover, we're going to look around some aggressive dieting stuff and some hormone-based stuff around fat loss. But just give us a quick background, Martin, as well, kind of rewinding from where Mac Nutrition is now, I suppose, for the, how did it get to where it is now, or how did you get to where you are now?
Yeah, so I suppose the longest story to the 10 seconds is now, obviously very much an educator and, with Mac Nutrition Uni and kind of the courses and at the minute doing my kind of own tour stuff, which is really a little bit of I suppose a passion project. It's not work. I probably shouldn't be doing it given how busy it makes me. And it's not kind of the bread and butter of what we do, but it's connecting with more general, lay public, like you've said, breaking it down into really applicable stuff. But prior to that, and the culmination of my tour talks, people are always saying, do I need to be a fitness professional to attend? And I'm like, no, the whole point of it is that it's beginner to intermediate, because my tour talk is the culmination of my early career of working with clients for 10 plus years. And that was Mac Nutrition, I think, because Mac Nutrition Uni has gone so big. I think it's 65 to 70 countries now, fitness professionals, nutritionists, dietitians, doctors, everyone, pharmacists, and even career changers. That's how people know me. And they kind of don't realize that my early career was just as an individual, self-employed. I was a university lecturer, but very 12 hours a week. And the rest of my time, I was a self-employed consultant, nutritionist working with individuals, and I worked with some governing bodies in sports nutrition. But as time went forward, and because my background, I kind of competed in natural bodybuilding for 5 years, there was always that element of being super interested in body composition, which I know kind of you want to touch on today. So it was just working with lots and lots of real humans, real people, not necessarily fitness industry, I'm going to say freaks, but that's said in the nicest possible way, because I was one of them. As a young nutritionist, not knowing what it's like to have children or have a very, very busy job, or have a husband or wife or these kind of things. It's like but you work with your clients and then go, oh geez, the Tupperware life is not necessarily for them. For instance, some of them, they unbelievably manage to do it, but getting this real pragmatic view of how to apply nutrition principles with people with real lives where nutrition or fitness isn't their life. They have other interests and areas of enjoyment and things that make them busy. So being able to dial in on what really matters. And then also, when you work with hundreds, if not thousands of people, you start to realize that physiology and biochemistry and these things in terms of the physics of calories don't matter in and of themselves if you forget the psychology, which is annoying because psychology, it's still a emerging-ish science, I say, because typically it's very difficult to study compared to something that you can control a lot more in cells and these kind of things. So and kind of test tube studies and animal studies, it's very different. You wouldn't necessarily relate some of the psychology stuff we look at in terms of like disordered eating or eating disorders. You wouldn't take a mouse and go, oh, this mouse has got anorexia nervosa sort of thing, and therefore we're going to relate this to humans. So we're still learning this stuff. But as practitioners, I mean, you will know, sometimes it's how can I just talk to my client? How can I encourage them? At what points do I see some red flags and we need to dial things back, and maybe they're getting a bit obsessive and then they're going to end up worse because of me or my help, or at least the environment I'm putting them in. So yeah, that's what I've come to today, is like I want at my tour and with Mac Nutrition Uni and everything, give something back with regards to this first do no harm attitude of, there's, like you've said, there's a lot of rubbish out there in the industry that's either doing harm or it's doing no good, which chronically will lead to more issues. Like if people are spending time and money and emotional energy on something and then feeling like a failure at the end of it, that's actually a bad thing, and it's worse than I think we give it credit for. So anyway, yeah, like coming to today, that's where things come. A kind of thriving consultancy, working with clients, moving into kind of mentoring some fitness professional, these kind of things, and then onto our kind of obviously big now qualification, Mac Nutrition Uni.
Yes, brilliant. A lot of light bulbs are going off just as you're talking there, Martin, because if I rewind 7-8 years ago, I kind of went down that route myself of being super strict. Never did any shows or anything like that. It was just my own kind of, it's where my love started to come out for training, foremost, then nutrition. And when I first started Doc Fitness, I started in a local hurling field. Talked about this before, but the first thing I made my clients do from a nutritional standpoint, because all of a sudden I thought I had the authority to be a nutritionist, I put everybody on paleo. I couldn't understand why wouldn't you do it? Like, why didn't you stick to it after the first week? And yeah, you quickly realize that people have real lives. This 22-year-old who thinks he knows everything is just so way off the mark. It's hilarious. Like, but obviously it's part of the process growing up. And I think if I didn't, in one way looking back, if I didn't do that and experience that for myself, I wouldn't be able to feel how some of our clients go through those obsessive phases. Because like we have some clients with us that have been with us since day one, and we've seen the ups and downs of that. We've seen the aggressive phases, aggressive/obsessive, and kind of never mentally coming off the diet bandwagon. And that's probably the biggest thing that we teach, is that fucking dieting is not meant to be year-round type thing. And like you said, the psychology aspect, the client care element of what we call it for our staff here, it's 99.9% of what we do. The extra knowledge stuff is like the icing on the cake, and we really give that to our members once we have everything else nailed down. It's like further education for them. And I always make a joke that a big goal for our clients is to educate them more than most personal trainers out there, which I'd safely say a lot of them are. But I think rather than kind of going into, I have in my mind, I wanted to ebb into aggressive dieting, but I think it's nicer maybe to flow into the elements of myths and confusion, because when I first started back those few years ago, and I'm sure you're similar in this, we probably started to follow some people that we thought they were fucking God in the fitness world, and we followed what they did or what they put out. And yesterday, I was getting some of my questions in for the podcast, and something popped up on my Facebook. I don't go on Facebook as much as I used to, my newsfeed. I have it blocked to my laptop, so I might only see it on my phone. And I won't name names, but this guy that I've followed for 7 or 8 years pops up about saying how fat loss is not going to happen if your hormones are out of whack. And I was just like, oh my God, that's still out there. It's still bred and true. And this guy has a big following now. He has, I think, close to 500,000 followers across all these platforms. And that is huge. And he's selling products then off the back of that, selling an ebook on how to fix your hormones so you can continue to lose fat. So it's a question we get a bit through our clients. I think a lot of our clients come to us, and maybe Mac Nutrition or back in the day come to you. They probably know that the blatant myths are not true, but there is still an element of confusion where around menstrual cycle, and people hear things like ghrelin and insulin, and they're like, oh, that stops fat loss. Yeah. Hormones and fat loss. Do hormones, Martin, have an impact on fat loss?
Yeah, this discussion around hormones, I don't think it will necessarily ever go away, because do hormones impact fat loss? The yes or no answer is yes. The problem is when people don't fully understand maybe the interplay of what most evidence-based practitioners will understand is the core thing for people to understand and pay attention to and try to manipulate, which is their energy balance. And every man and his dog nowadays knows the term calorie deficit or energy deficit. But when we start going, if we've got a deficit in place, some change in hormones can stop fat loss. That's when we have this issue. We can understand that hormones will impact where maybe an energy deficit will lie with regards to your total energy intake. So if someone has hypothyroidism, so a slower metabolism because of hypothyroidism, this deficit, if we talk about the same absolute point, they may be in less of a deficit or at maintenance calories. But when people go, I have put out saying a calorie deficit, if you're in a deficit, you will lose energy from your body, and some of that will come from fat. And when we talk about an energy deficit or a calorie deficit, there are different places we can lose energy from. Obviously, in the worst case scenario, or one of the worst case scenarios of like cancer, you have just the breakdown of muscle tissue, fat tissue. You're losing energy from all these different stores, but you're not stopping fat loss, because so with hypothyroidism, if we're in a deficit, and I said, if you're in a deficit, you will be losing weight or fat. And someone goes, I think that's really bad of you to say that. What about something like hypothyroidism? It's totally different. And I was like, two things, social media, I'm not going to talk about every single different clinical situation, but two, no, it's not. In an energy deficit, someone with hypothyroidism will lose fat. That's unequivocal. But people kind of don't understand what an energy deficit is. And I think in their mind, very often people go, I've gone on the internet, I've typed in my height and weight, I've got a number, I've times it by this, I ate that, I didn't lose weight. For a start, we can go into adherence at some point and whether or not they're actually eating that, because people misreport by mistake. I have this thing of, everybody lies, be lie to yourself, but also you just make mistakes. Anything from 100 to 1,000 calories misreporting. So if you're in an energy deficit, you lose fat. But the other thing to say is, and where people, I think some of these gurus we're talking about, they'll try and make up that they can almost manipulate hormones in a way that is outside of the normal functioning of human physiology, which is you lose weight, your metabolism slows down through a factor of two major things of, one, you weigh less, your body is smaller, you're a smaller person, you burn less calories, and two, as you know about metabolic adaptation, or adaptive thermogenesis as it's called in the literature. And they then say, if you count your calories on, if you lose weight like that, you'll slow your metabolism, and that's why you plateau. Do my program, this magical hormone manipulating program, and you'll lose weight and your metabolism won't slow down and you won't plateau. That is a lie. That's the myth. Yes, hormones change when you lose weight, yes, but it's the calorie deficit that's changing the hormones that then is making weight loss harder. It's not hormones, weight, calories harder. That's not, they've got these things in the wrong way round. So yes, testosterone will change when you're in a calorie deficit. Yes, thyroid output might change when you're in a calorie deficit, but it's not the other way around. You can't go, oh, you've got metabolic adaptation. How do you fix metabolic adaptation? You eat more. You eat more calories. Again, we're going back to the kind of primary thing of calories. You eat more, but then you're likely to put on some body fat if it's prolonged over a prolonged period. Therefore, you're doing the opposite of what they were trying to sell you this program for. Like, oh, you need to manage your ghrelin levels. It's like ghrelin is outside of, if you control your calories, yeah, it might be harder. Ghrelin's irrelevant. You're just going to be hungrier. But yeah, can we impact ghrelin? Yeah, we can with protein. Brilliant. But every personal trainer who's a day in the job knows about protein and probably have a little bit more. So yes, hormones impact fat loss, but no, we're not taking any special herbs. I mean, that's my personal bugbear. And these people who are selling these herbal supplement programs, and essentially they are just making money. Anyone who does that for probably more than a year, I would say that you have a morality issue. You know full well that those herbs, like, people get sold into it, and I get it. Loads of MNU students and people I know have done these kind of special, like, biosignature and bioprint courses where you are told that you can work out people's hormones based on the fat store, where it's stored on the body, and then told what herbs you can take to correct that, and then your clients will get magic results. But you do that for a year, and I fail to see how anyone with half a brain could not see that it's making no impact. And therefore, if you continue to recommend those supplements and sell them and make money off your clients in a way that's not helping them in any way, shape or form, you're a bad person, as far as I'm concerned. Like, we all get misled. I've said stupid things. I 100% admit that. You've just said you put everyone on paleo. Like, we all have a journey, but you have to remain teachable. And if you're a good person, you will realize, do you know what? Me telling all my clients to do paleo, or me telling people not to have gluten, or these things, they're not having an impact. But I get a buzz out of sounding clever. So what's more important to you, helping people or sounding clever, or helping people or making money? So yeah, I'm not a fan of the hormones thing, but it's understandable. We could go into the whole insulin thing. Insulin plays a role inside the body in the minutiae of lipolysis and the breakdown of fat, etc. But you don't need to look to manipulate it to lose fat. But yeah,
I think you touched on a brilliant point. You mentioned metabolic adaptation. We went over it a little bit quick. It's fine for us. Let's go a little bit deeper into metabolic adaptation. What exactly is happening? If somebody's losing fat at a certain rate and now it slows down and they're like, oh shit, they think it's not working anymore. What is actually happening in a layman's terms?
Yeah. So to summarize, you've got that instance of they weigh less. They may have lost 5 to 10 pounds, 20 pounds, whatever. They weigh less. They're burning slightly less calories. That second part, the metabolic adaptation or adaptive thermogenesis, it's basically the body trying to conserve energy. So you will change habits, normal habits, because of the fact. And the really annoying, or two annoying things about it are, we can't measure it very well. So if we're talking pragmatically, for any coaches listening, or any of your kind of clients or your listeners who are laypersons, we can't really measure this. So we can't go to an online calculator. We can't easily go to our coach and get them to tell us how metabolically adapted we are. That's the really annoying thing. The second one is, it's different for everyone. So you get some people who really don't metabolically adapt very much, and we don't like those people. They are the genetically blessed, they are the lucky, generally young, male. So again, in the other end of the spectrum, we've got females, and people, as you get older, your metabolic adaptation is likely to be worse, and at least any form of correcting it might be worse as well. So, in terms of, when you overfeed, most people's metabolism will increase. But if you're a female or you are older, your metabolism doesn't increase as much as maybe a younger male counterpart. So when you learn that basic piece of physiology, you start to realize why lots of clients tend to be in the former rather than the latter category. So metabolic adaptation is something as simple as you walk around less. you do less steps. Now, when I was practicing, there wasn't such a craze, or there wasn't as many like Fitbits and Apple Watches and these kind of things that were counting your steps. When I learned about these things, you had like these accelerometers, triaxial accelerometers, you clip them onto your belt, and pedometers. It was a bit geeky, it was a bit weird, they were very inaccurate. It just wasn't a done thing. Now, if I took on a client today that I wanted to help, with weight loss and those kind of things, I'd be saying, get one of these trackers, not to tell you your energy expenditure, definitely not, because they can be very accurate, but to track things. Because if you don't, it's the whole, if you don't monitor, you can't, adapt to it and change things. So, if it's not measured, it's not managed. So we can look at steps subconsciously going down. This isn't people going, oh, I'm on a diet, I'm not going to bother. It's all subconscious movement. Some of it is just literally postural control goes down. Even your face, if you're, very heavily dieted, you just stop becoming as expressive with your face. So, this part of it, we can do some things to manage it, which is something as simple as increasing your steps throughout a diet rather than letting them come down, or at least maintaining them. Other sides of it are difficult. So part of the whole conservation of energy is the increase in appetite. And so with changing hormones, we get this increase in appetite. So again, can we do much around that? Not really. We can at least, and this is something that actually, if we do talk about anything to do with like menstrual cycle and that kind of stuff, what I often say is, generally we want to max out as long as it's not causing things to be too difficult to adhere to. But we want to max out strategies that help us manage hunger and not be hungry during a diet. The problem is it means when things get tough, we're already maxed out. There's nothing extra that we can jump to, what's the next level of protein intake I'm going to eat? So you don't go, I'm on 100 grams of protein, then you go, right, I'm going to go up to 200, then I'm going to go up to 300. Like, it just doesn't work. So with regards to this metabolic adaptation, it's something that we have to do some long continuing strategies, again, because we probably want lasting weight loss. And therefore, we want to build at least the things that are helping us to maintain weight as the longer strategies, rather than some of the stuff we might do in the short term. For instance, an aggressive deficit. We don't need to learn how to do that to maintain it for the rest of our life. Like you said, year-round dieting, it's just not a thing. But the stuff that's going to help us maintain, let's turn that into a habit.
Yes, brilliant. Couple of things we can directly go into. Yeah, the rates of how long we should be in the fat loss phase and that kind of stuff from there, because there is caveats to that. One guy actually popped to mind. One of our clients just last week, he had to sit down with one of our coaches because he expressed some concern how he's waking up in the middle of the night going for chocolate and genuinely getting like intense cravings. And when I went back and kind of had a look through things, we figured out that he was actually like dieting for the last 6 months straight. But we knew that he was having an odd night out here and there with friends, so he wasn't, perfectly linear. There was, we'll call it a refeed, maybe once every month or something like that. So we weren't too concerned. His training has been progressing fine. He's actually been upping his training as well in the gym. Until we realised, his calories are just too low for too long, and he needs to just come back to maintenance for a while. Simple as that. Within a few days, that cravings have just gone because he's more calories, and we haven't changed his protein because his protein was fine, but for him he was just fucking dieting too long and doing nearly doing too much because he's in an active job. He increased his training load in the gym, so you have those extreme scenarios as well, which I suppose ebbs into aggressive dieting, Martin. I'm a fan of it. We talk about it a lot on Mac Nutrition course, some of the conferences I've been to, which you involved as well. And I think you talk about it a bit in your social media, Instagram. There's a lot of pros, there's a lot of cons, I suppose, as well, depending on the person. But where do we start with aggressive dieting? Anything? would you like to just start with the pros of it and go from there?
Sure.
Because we can tailor into different factors from there then.
Yeah. I think different times it's good to talk about the pros versus the cons first. I think with what we're talking about here is like large calorie deficits. I think that's important to define. It's like what we're talking about in terms of aggressive. There's no set figure for a start, but we're talking about, rather than going for this usual, say 500 calorie deficit, calorie deficits upward of 1,000 or more calories per day. And I think the reason it's good to start with the pros is because straight away when you say that, people are like, wrong. And I can't remember, actually, I saw something on Instagram from one of the like well-liked, he's a good person, I'm sure, mostly evidence-based, but not necessarily, or mostly a good message, but I don't think necessarily dials into, he says stuff that sounds nice and it's probably not going to hurt anyone, but it's not necessarily based in science. So this is one of those areas where people go, slow and steady wins the race, always. You should always do this, always do that. And it's just like, it's not going to hurt anyone saying someone should always eat more fiber. And there are instances where some people shouldn't always eat more fiber. But it's probably not going to hurt too many people type scenario. He's not making any money out telling people this. But it's this idea of you always want to diet slowly. You always want to have a small calorie deficit. You always want things to implement things that can be lifelong habits. And as I said earlier, that doesn't always need to be the case because we have different phases in our life. People have different females have different phases within their month. And the weight loss phase, the hope is that it gets done in whatever time frame that is, and then you start living, let's say, in a slightly different format to maybe what led you to where you wanted to diet or lose body fat. And again, I talk about this multi-phasic dieting strategy. And if you just see anything I say as one thing, so it's like aggressive deficit, oh great, so I have got 100 pounds to lose, and you're saying that I should have a 1,000 to 1,500 to 2,000 calorie deficit every single day for how many months it's going to take me. No, I'm not. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying within the time that it takes you to lose weight, you could have periods. It's multiphasic. You might have a holiday within there. You might have a weekend that's different. You might have a 2-week period where you practice living. Before you get to your end goal, you have 2 weeks of practicing to live. And you'll know I talk about this concept of coaching people to live. And if you can do that within this multiphasic strategy where sometimes they can just put everything into their training, they're not feeling hungry, they can push a bit harder, their sleep is fantastic, etc., etc., you can push harder during that phase. You can have a typical 500 calorie deficit period for any number of days or weeks. But it doesn't have to be this one set thing. But the idea that you would never put someone in a larger than 500 calorie deficit, for instance, is incorrect. And so if we go back to, and it depends on the client, if you have a very lean individual who wants to completely maintain all their muscle, maybe improve their training and get stronger, you don't want to put them in a 1,500 calorie deficit. Of course you don't. The research shows us that we're gonna hugely increase the likelihood of lean body mass loss and specifically muscle tissue. But if you have someone who is 20, 30, 40, 50% body fat, these kind of deficits are because you have more body fat. People sometimes forget to link this forward, that the actual amount of fat that you have in front of you, those are all made up of different cells. Those cells can release their energy into the system that we can then burn for energy. If you are very lean and you put someone in a very large calorie deficit, you have less of this ability to mobilize the fat to use as fuel, and you'll start taking it from other areas. But if someone has got a high level of body fat, the research shows that people who diet harder on a bigger deficit initially get better results. And I think when people first hear that, they do struggle. They do struggle to hear that. And we're not talking about just a typical person who wants to lose a few pounds. We're talking about people who have big weight loss goals that they want to do for health reasons, for aesthetic reasons, whatever their personal reasons are. So talking about a more aggressive approach, lower calorie diets. And people go, no, if you diet faster, you'll rebound quicker and put on more weight. The research doesn't show that. And that's what I mean about this idea of saying something that sounds nice but isn't true. If you're saying something like that, you can go, well, it happened to my auntie. It's like, that's not science. That's not a thing. When we look at the actual research in these individuals, they are losing weight quicker, obviously, but they are also maintaining weight, more weight at 1 and 2 years and even 5 years post intervention. These interventions are also not perfect. I personally would not diet someone in the way that the studies tend to, but they are a proof of concept. And some of the proof of concepts that we see are they don't hemorrhage muscle mass like you would imagine they would. Their metabolic rate does not slow down more than the slower weight loss groups, other than the fact that they've lost more weight. So that's always, people go, oh, their metabolism slowed down more. It's like, yeah, they lost 400% of the amount of fat that you did. Of course it did. But when you take 4 years to get to where they did, your metabolism will be just the same, but you'll have been dieting for a lot longer and you'll have all of the psychological impacts that might have. But then the biggest one for me is appetite regulation. You have this bizarre, paradoxical scenario that eating less calories makes you less hungry, not more hungry, which, I started talking about this in about 2015, and I started reading all the research on this. And honestly, it was like I was mind blown. So I'm not, anyone listening, hearing this going, no, I don't believe it. I haven't got you a low calorie diet to sell you. I'm not telling you this because it benefits me. I'm telling you what the research says. I would love for there to be so much more research in this area. One of my kind of life goals is to fund my own very, very expensive study. For no reason. It's not going to make me any money because I want the answers. I think the answers to the stuff that I want to know will help others, and it would just be so cool. But when you talk about cons, those are some, like, what more could you want? Faster fat loss with less hunger. Like, that's a flipping big pro, right?
We're doing it as we speak with our actual clients. We're running an internal fat loss challenge. Oh, so even though we coach clients in this anyway, it's a period for them to give them a kick up the arse, to hold each other accountable. I think we've over 35 clients doing it at the moment. But before we started the challenge, we had an in-house seminar where, again, explaining the pros and cons to it. The fact of the matter is, there was a lot of clients that weren't in a position to do it. They just have too much shit going on in their lives. Their lack of sleep with newborns. Getting to the gym is a struggle for them right now. So they're either just in a tiny calorie deficit or else they're not worrying about losing fat right now. And we're trying to drive that home. So people that are in this aggressive phase, they're ready to do it. They're ready to get in, get out, get it done. But like you said, it allows them to live their life a little bit more. So I could go on a fat loss phase. You could go on a fat loss phase. You could do it in 6 weeks. I could do it in 12. We lose the same amount of fat, only that I'm just doing it for longer. Again, you need to weigh up, what's going to suit me or you better. But I personally work really well off them. But again, bear in mind that I always say this to people. I've spent 12, 16 weeks in fat loss phases in the past, and I know what they feel like, and I found them grand. Whereas now I just love to get in, get out, get it done. Again, it's an individual thing, but it's just to know that it's possible to do that. And yeah, I've seen that stuff in the past. Slow and steady wins the race. Focus on building your habits of getting protein, eating more veggies, getting more steps. And we do that anyway. It just means that you're in a more aggressive deficit, so you can get in, get out quicker.
I think a huge issue with people hearing these facts is that people just love absolutes, and they'll take this snippet and they'll go, Martin's saying everyone should do this. It's like, no, take it for what it is. I'm telling you what some research in a specific group of individuals showed. I'm also saying they don't do it well. The protein intakes that they use are not enough. I'm saying that they probably don't screen these individuals for disordered eating or eating disorders. Well, they probably do actually screen them for eating disorders, but it's the fine line before that becomes the sort of preclinical type stuff. But it's like you said, you've done stuff before. If you've got some good habits to begin with, my tour, I pretty much tell half the audience to just stop focusing on fat loss, stop dieting. You will have a better life and you'll be able to lose fat more in the long term if you stop dieting now and do these things. But if you continue beating the same drum, you're just going to fail. And that's going to just leave you in a worse place. So like you've just said, it's like some people, you're not going to push them towards that because it would be silly. It would just lead to failure for them. But once you've got a good standing and once you've got a different perception of what you're trying to achieve, it's not a fad. You have some understanding of why you're doing it. You also understand things like unconditional permission to eat. You are not being restricted by an outside force. You are not going to be kind of damned for going, do you know what, today I'm really freaking hungry and I'm going to go back to maintenance calories. Because within an aggressive diet, that is 100% okay. It's the days where you go, or where you get coaches going, someone going, I'm not hungry. And the coach, I know you must force feed your last 500 calories at the end of the day, because if you don't, some magical thing will happen. It's like, if you're not hungry and you're loving the diet and you're getting your micronutrients in and you're hitting your protein targets and you're managing to train and it's not causing you to have like the tendencies of binging on chocolate and these kind of things, then it's absolutely okay from a physiological perspective. You do have the flip side to this of someone going, I want to lose fat to put me in a good standing for fertility reasons, for instance. Something like this, an aggressive diet, depending on when they're starting, their body fat levels and the way their body is or reacts to this kind of thing, if it starts to impact their menstrual cycle, it's not a good idea. But any human, not even coach, any human should be able to go, why am I doing this? This thing is making that thing worse. I should probably stop. And unfortunately, people don't, because people go, and this is where you get the whole weight stigma, body positive, fat phobic discussion happening, because people are so obsessed with weight loss or fat or the way they look or their BMI that they forget, why was I doing this again? Oh yeah, to be happy. Why was I doing this again? Oh yeah, to have a baby. Well, your menstrual cycle stopped, so stop doing it. But the problem is, it's not always just them, it's then their coach encouraging and pushing and also forgetting. So those discussions are fantastic ones. They create a lot of noise and confusion because some of the people having them, again, are not science-based, and I would actually say most of them are not science-based. But it's good that the discussion is happening around body positivity and weight stigma and the fat phobia. You get these scenarios, these real life scenarios of doctors not running basic tests for things like tumors because they just blame, they're just like, no, you know what, that pain, that weird pain that's only just come on is probably just because you're fat. And not sending them for basic diagnostic tests. Oh no, it was a tumor on their spine. You didn't do your job. That's medical malpractice. Like, that stuff needs to be taken out. And these clients who are in these higher body fat categories being treated the same as leaner patients, clients, whatever. But yeah, this scenario of I want to encourage people, and I think I have been encouraging the conversation for almost 5 years now, of don't shy away from maybe more aggressive deficits within phases, because it can be super helpful for people, but they have to maintain this unconditional permission to eat. Nothing is, like paleo, you must not have dairy, you must not have grains. An aggressive deficit, you can eat whatever you want, but you are in control. And that is such an important thing with regards to longevity.
I think you hit the nail on the head as well by telling people to stop dieting. Like that would solve a lot, but again, that's hard for some people to hear when they've spent 3 or 4 years of their life obsessing over it. I see this as well. Like, do you know, if you're going through Instagram and you go down a rabbit hole and you come across somebody who maybe have 20,000 to 100,000 followers, the whole thing is just pictures of them in probably bikinis, and let's just say that they're carrying like a female's carrying 30 to 40% body fat, and you scroll down and they're like, love my body, be positive in your skin, all this kind of stuff, and then 2 weeks later they're saying how they feel so insecure and the world's going to end. A few days later it's something different. Do you know, I can't help but feel like it's not a bit ironic. Stop fucking putting the pictures on it on social media. Stop over upset. Like, it's easy for us to say it. It's easy to say stop, but again, maybe those seeds should be planted more. But like you said, it depends where they're getting information from. It depends what coach they have under them. Like, there's so many context levels you can go to. Somebody could pick up what we just said there in the wrong way and attack us for it, where you're not seeing the 5 other different scenarios that we might be talking about, you know. So it's hard on social media, but at the same time, that's why we have things like these podcasts to kind of hash it out in a little bit more detail. But we're never going to be able to cover every aspect of things.
Yeah.
But no, some brilliant discussion there on some hormone-related stuff and aggressive dieting. And I think to summarize it, Martin, like, we're basically saying that hormones, yes, can impact fat loss, but just because some things might be at play, it doesn't mean it's going to stop. A calorie deficit, a negative energy balance is still going to be the key determining factor whether someone loses weight or not. Aggressive diets may work for you, may not. And I think one thing that I want to finish on, and you can add to this if you want, we're on week 3 of our fat loss challenge this week. I was chatting to one of our ladies on Monday. Bear in mind, she's a small female. She does not really have, like, in her head, she wants to tone up. She doesn't want to lose weight, which basically means she wants to lose fat. So weight will come down slightly. She's down 2 pounds, which for her is fucking massive. And the start of week 3, Monday morning, I said, how are things going? Just on the gym floor. Yeah, grand, yeah. I'm only down 2 pounds though. And I was like, Jesus, fair play. That's unbelievable. Like, but no, in her head it was like, oh, it's only 2 pounds, not that much. And just trying to reframe those expectations. But it kind of came back to the metabolic adaptation thing. This person has dieted in the past. They've gone through phases. They've gone through a long maintenance phase, and now they're doing the 6-week challenge. They have less body fat to lose in the first place. They weigh less. They're not going to see 3 and 4 pounds a week in the scales compared to somebody else who might be a few stone more heavier than that person. So you have to take all that with a pinch of salt. And again, education is a big key player in all of that. The last topic is probably going to open a can of worms you're not prepared for. But dairy, meat, vegan, vegetarian, those words are cropping up an awful lot lately, Martin. But I think a nice way to start with this is, like, just take dairy, for example. There's so much stuff out there around it. And if dairy was out of my life, I think I'd die. But give us some cold, hard facts on the positives of dairy, because everyone seems to think that it's feckin' bad all of a sudden. Yeah.
Yeah, so this has come from essentially the kind of vegan propaganda documentaries that are out there, and which are sadly not focusing, but at the same time I say sadly, for what a vegan propaganda documentary wants to do. Realistically, it wants to raise awareness. It wants to stir the pot. It wants to generate discussion. Likewise, people are profiteering from the vegan kind of side of things. People like to make money. People are greedy. So they don't care if they mislead people very often, especially it's for a good cause. So if you can stop people eating less meat and having less dairy, you think you're doing a good thing in the world, but it doesn't matter that you're lying about all the nutrition science, which creates controversy, which makes the message bigger, which increases this a little bit, and also makes you loads more money because you sell vegan XYZ. I did, I think, 5 posts on this, looking at some of the key claims around getting dairy out of your diet, reducing your meat intake, and just the preponderance of evidence shows that these things aren't true. You know, it's very easy to go, look at this athlete, he's vegan and he has muscles. It's like, that's one guy in the history of how many millions of athletes. Yes, there are ways with taking specific supplements and eating a very specific diet that you can that you can manage, and you can do well in your sport if you have loads of talent, whatever. But this athlete who eats meat, going vegan is not going to improve him or make his recovery better or whatever, not going to reduce inflammation. And that's where I'll start. This idea that dairy causes inflammation is not true. Like, it's difficult when you talk about...
But dairy is only for cows.
Yeah, okay, yeah. These things, like, who decides what we are and aren't allowed to eat? But so... we have the science. So people go, oh, it's funded by industry. Like, the documentary that you're watching was made by a guy who sells vegan meals, ready meals. Like, it's the same thing, except this one was peer reviewed and a randomized control trial and measured cells that the cells not lying to you on how many inflammatory interleukin 6 is producing, or TNF, like these things that we can measure. And dairy's actually, there's tens of thousands of data points. Dairy is either neutral impact on inflammation or it's anti-inflammatory. This idea that dairy is causing disease, like I think his name's Michael Greger or something like that. Nutrition Facts, whatever. He's like just a super vegan proponent and massive following. You go onto his website and he's got these very alluring articles, well written storytelling, get you to your emotions. Just scroll to the bottom, look at the references. The references are utterly laughable, and just the most random of references in like a strange species of animal, and then relating that to the impact it will have on humans. Or he'll just reference his own book, or he'll reference someone else's opinion, or reference meatisbad.org, which is like, you can't reference some random blog. So we know for a fact that eating a more plant-based diet improves health in lots of people. Now, it's so important. You get all these journalists and reporters and just generally muppets using the term plant-based to mean vegan or vegetarian. You can eat a plant-based diet if you're eating oats and vegetables and fruit and nuts and beans and chicken and dairy. You're still plant-based. The majority of your diet is coming from plants. All of those different things. Your potato, people go, oh, plant-based being like leafy green veg. It's not. Potatoes are plant-based. Nuts are plant-based. We know that people should be eating more fruit and vegetables and legumes and these kind of things for a variety of different reasons. And the more we understand about gut health, I think we're getting to understand more of why those things are positive. But by removing animal products from the diet, it doesn't make people healthier unless they eat more plant-based foods. So you can literally keep your chicken in, but just have some broccoli with it. You don't have to eat any fancy, crazy, berries from tropical forests or these kind of things. Just eat more fruit and vegetables, legumes, get more whole grain type carbohydrate sources in your diet. You don't have to reduce your chicken. You don't have to stop having some milk. If you're getting most of your calories in your diet from bacon and butter, you're probably not the healthiest human being on the planet. And then on the flip side, there is this issue of going vegetarian or vegan initially leads to some weight loss, almost invariably. And therefore, we know that weight loss in the short term, just in lots of markers you can measure, will improve. For instance, inflammation will go down with weight loss. But it wasn't the fact that you remove these things. You can remove anything and inflammation will go down because you lost weight. It's a bit like people saying that fasting reduces inflammation. Well, yeah, because you're not eating any foods, and this weight loss process, it tends to be an anti-inflammatory. in the short term, you can just measure the impact it has on cholesterol and blood pressure and these kind of things as well. So you think, oh, I'm healthier. And it's like, the other side of it is, if you manage to maintain your weight on a vegan diet because you just started eating Mars bars instead of chicken and eggs and milk, you probably would get no healthier. You probably get significantly unhealthier. So yeah, it is a big topic of conversation.
Yeah, it's massive.
And I would just like the main thing that people take away from it is just like, yeah, eating more fruits and vegetables, legumes, whole grains, etc. It's going to make you healthier, and maybe make some changes around that. But don't jump to buying vegan ready meals.
We could probably go, like, you could have a whole podcast series on this if you wanted to go super deep. But I wasn't even going to touch on it because we could open up a can of worms and we don't have enough time to go into it that deep. But I still wanted to get a quick viewpoint from you on it. Like, we're not arguing the fact that people need to eat more fruit and veggies, etc. But it's jumping on the bandwagon based on watching a Netflix documentary or based on hearing some celebrities gone vegan now. And for ethical reasons and all that side of it, that's fine. And we've nothing against that. We have a few clients like that. And our goal for them is to make sure that they're doing basic things right, like protein and all the other nutrients and all the bits that they may be deficient in. But you'd be shocked at how many people are jumping on the bandwagon because certain players are doing it. And I know we laugh about it, but I've actually heard of friends through friends that are doing it because a local Dublin footballer has done it, or this footballer over in the UK has done it. And then they go and watch the documentary and they're like, Jesus, I might try to do that now. That's what's wrong with me. That's why I'm not performing, or that's why I'm not. No, it's because you're living like you're probably a dickhead and you're drinking every second weekend and you probably smoke, and these people don't do that. So yeah, no, I think we'll shut. Did you want to say something on it?
I'll just say real quickly, there is this other thing that's, now that I just say when talking about this thing, is these same people who talk about not doing fads and not doing extreme deficits or jumping into something and like, oh, you know, little habits and whatever, like any other myth that they go at, but yet they jump into being a full-blown vegan off the back of being a full-blown omnivore, rather than just doing little steps that might be sustainable, like eat vegetables at more than one of your meals per day. Like that you could build into a habit and move towards. If you really, really care about animals and animal welfare and you can't bear to, like, do it slowly, rather than jumping and going, crap, I don't even know how to make a proper fully vegan meal and a nutritionally balanced vegan diet. So you move into it slowly, rather than just going, documentary, I'm vegan. Like, it's ridiculous. But yeah, we can stop there.
Yeah, well, I got one question on that for, we'll move into the last quickfire section. Got one question on it through Instagram. Why do people believe Netflix documentaries over thousands of years of people living and eating healthily?
I think it's just this thing of, in this day and age, well, if you look at marketing, storytelling is what works. So storytelling, and then also potentially trusting well-known figures. So whereas maybe someone who was allowed a voice, who was respected, you know, imagine this person saying thousands of years, right? You look back to like the time where we had elders. These were wise people who had lots of knowledge, who spent a lot of time thinking and had knowledge passed down. They were the respected individuals who you probably would do well to listen to. Now the people who are given a platform, who are raised up as important people, whether that's through a talent in acting or a talent in sport or these kind of things, why on earth would you listen to a Dublin footballer, like someone who's great at Gaelic football, someone who's great at hurling, about nutrition? Like, there's nothing special about them with regards to nutrition. If they go, this is a great way that you might get better at the sport, maybe listen to them. But the problem is, we put them on a pedestal. You know, Lewis Hamilton talking about veganism. It's like, what on earth does he know about nutrition? So that is the two things. Storytelling, people buy into emotions. People buy into a story of success, and people respect the wrong people. I think those are two huge reasons where we just sit there and you just let someone feed your mind with a Netflix documentary. And unfortunately, people don't understand science. No, it's not necessarily taught very well in schools. And it was something that was limited to a certain group of individuals originally. Now it's just brought to our faces. This is science. This is the truth. Here's a Netflix documentary. The world is unfortunately fairly corrupt, and people don't realize. People come to me, how are they allowed to lie on Netflix? It's you. When you watch Lord of the Rings, did you believe it? Because it's in the same category. It's like, it's just made up stuff. You don't have to go through any special stuff to go, this is correct. It's like, you can say what you want. It's Netflix. No one's going to SpongeBob SquarePants and going, oh, they were underwater and they didn't die. I'm going to go live underwater as well. Like, it's ridiculous.
Yes. I will say, just to clarify, that Dublin footballer I mentioned, he wasn't proponent at, and he is a proper vegan athlete, I would say. But I'm saying, yeah, no. But there's only, I think there's only one. That's why I'm just covering my own arse here. But no, I'm just saying people were just mindlessly starting to copy him. And I know Daniel Davy. He's the Dublin nutritionist. Actually came out and said, or had to say, like, look, don't just go copy him just because he's doing it. He's doing it right, etc. But yes, people are stupid too on top of it all, aren't they? They just believe anything. One question actually that meant to come up in the hormone section: does the menstrual cycle affect fat loss? You see some people saying during your menstrual cycle go into a maintenance phase. You see some saying it doesn't have any impact. Can't remember the lady's name who supposedly researched this topic for the last 20 years. Her name doesn't come to mind. I think she's an Irish lady. Anyhow, from what you are aware of, Martin, menstrual cycle and, yes, fat loss.
Yeah, trying just like a quick snippet. It's essentially, if we talk about it like, a month, 28 days, whatever, it obviously varies in length. Things change within your menstrual cycle, and specific to fat loss, energy expenditure and hunger change at different phases of the menstrual cycle. Now, if you talk about the start of the menstrual cycle as menstruation, and then we go into this follicular phase, and then ovulation is where we release the egg, and we call that right in the middle. And then you've got the last 2-ish weeks, for instance. In this last 2-ish weeks, the body temperature goes up a little bit and energy expenditure goes up a little bit. And most women, or I don't know actually most, that might be not correct, but a lot of women will report that they get a huge increase in hunger in this final phase. So the kind of week before they come on, and they'll report more cravings and these kind of things. And it's in this phase that their metabolism is actually slightly higher. So does it impact fat loss? What doesn't impact fat loss with regards to our lives? There are some changes in what macronutrients we are burning for energy, to put it simplistically. But at the same time, that there's no evidence that by providing more of carbohydrate or more or fat, actually how you program for exercise can be adapted slightly. There are phases where you are maybe stronger. There are phases where you are more flexible, and maybe that's actually increased risk of injury. That isn't my expert area. But when we come to fat loss, you have to come back to calorie deficit. And you have to also come back to the most important factor, which is adherence. So in this period where cravings go up a lot, and also you have to work with the individual in front of you. You have to work with yourself if you're a layperson, or if you're a coach, work with the person in front of you. Don't apply a formula of menstrual cycle to everyone, because one, menstrual cycle lengths differ. Some people don't have a menstrual cycle. Some people are using birth control pill. And likewise, even if someone has exactly the same, they're not on birth control, they've got the same length cycle, they might also react differently, i.e. their cravings might not go up. Their energy expenditure might only go up 50 to 100 calories in this phase. This person's might go up 200 to 300 calories in this phase. Work with the person in front of you. One thing I would say is people just, as I said earlier, get dumb. They forget, they don't think, they don't reflect. They just hammer the same drum that they've been told. They're a bit confused, so they just go they're very myopic, and they just go, oh, I'm in a 500 calorie deficit and I'm doing it and it's really hard. Oh, it's a bit easier this week, it's really hard. And they don't ever learn and go, do you know what? It's really freaking hard during that week. And actually, I struggle to eat well, and my mentality around exercise and eating well is just really dampened, and it's just horrible. After years and years and years of this, of being a woman, working with a 40-year-old client who maybe has got a 20-year history of diets and a mixed relationship with exercise, they haven't learnt this. And I talk about this a lot on my tour, a good few, probably an hour on this intermittently. But this week, if you are this person who has intense cravings in this week, your metabolism might be 100, 200, 300 calories higher in this week, for instance, and you're trying to put yourself in a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 900 calorie deficit at the same time, rather than rushing towards the goal. So, I've talked about fast weight loss and aggressive calorie deficits. You might do that another time in the month, but during this week, when maybe you're undermining other parts of your progress, look at this week and go, I keep failing. What can I do? And when I say failing, I mean you keep working against yourself and feeling crap because of it. You're trying to stick to a certain calorie deficit and you just can't do it. Some months you hit it, some months you don't. Stop dieting in that week. I'm not telling you to stop dieting completely, but people go, oh, they're not, I'm not going to lose any weight for a week. You're not losing any weight anyway, because and you're also harming your own mental health, your own psychology, feelings of well-being. Enjoy your exercise in that week. Increase your calories by 100, 200, 300 calories to account for this approximate increase in energy expenditure. But also, just remove the calorie deficit. How amazing would it be to increase your calories by 200, we'll take middle of the range, for that potential approximate increase in energy expenditure, and then add in another 500, which is the deficit you were trying to do. How much chocolate could you eat for 700 calories daily within a controlled, non-binging fashion? It's, you put it in that perspective and you go, flipping it, that's a lot of chocolate every single day for a week, whilst also eating all of my vegetables, all of my protein, all of my fruit, all of the other good things that I'm eating. I'm just topping up my calories with stuff that I really, really enjoy. People talk about all sorts of fancy stuff with regards to chocolate and magnesium deficiency, all that kind of stuff. The research isn't there, so I just don't really talk about it or buy into it. But from just a pragmatic, in the human race, there's chocolate everywhere. I flipping love chocolate. Do that for that week. You shouldn't be cutting out chocolate completely anyway if you're a chocolate lover, but actually just eating a bit more if that's what you're craving. I'm not saying eat chocolate, I'm just using it as an example. But yeah, that's how the menstrual cycle and this time around menstruation, the week before-ish, works. It might be that you don't have a whole week of it. It might be you have only had 2 days of it. And what I've described there is based on some specific physiology that's been measured and mapped out. But take what I've said there and apply it to the rest of your life. If you go through a week where you feel like that because of a lack of sleep, and we know that could impact ghrelin and increase hunger, do the same. Give yourself a flipping break instead of hammering yourself into the ground and then not being able to do stuff.
It's like a week of stressful week in work, a shitty week of sleep. It's kind of the same thing. Like to be honest, we've never really put that in our female clients' heads. Because there's a couple of ways of looking at it. Like we've had a couple of clients that might come to us during that week, and they're just like, oh, I'm just not feeling it this week. And in one regard, they still get on with it, they still live their life, but we do say, like, if you want to add in a few more sweet craving stuff, if you want to add in an extra couple of hundred calories, that's fine to do. And we've done that. We don't just blanket say it to everyone, because we don't want them to think that, oh, that's going to happen now once a month for me or whatever it is. Because, the placebo effect of this can be dangerous as well. But to be honest, like I'd say over 7 years of coaching hundreds of clients a week, I could count my hand how many people's calories we've brought up to a maintenance level for that week. But that's because mainly they've been dieting for a few weeks, they've shit going on, they're too long on a deficit, etc. If you feel a bit shit and you're craving a little bit more, have that little bit more sweet stuff. It's not going to affect anything. And having that education and to get on with it's fine. Knowing that the gym mightn't be great that week, knowing you may not progress that week, or maybe you mightn't progress 1 week out of 6 months. That's fine. It's just it's awareness and adapting to yourself.
100%.
But Martin, absolutely fantastic. Where can people find you? Yeah, Instagram?
Yeah. Best places are, one, my Instagram is kind of where I put most of my content. Also Facebook, so at Martin Nutrition. Just Google Martin MacDonald and whatever social media platform. And then my website is martin-macdonald.com. And that kind of the best thing over time, I've only recently kind of launched that properly to just have a place where people, a repository of articles and information, and kind of I'll link back to like this podcast, for instance, all the podcasts I do. If martinmacdonald.com/podcast, you can see all the ones I've appeared on. But the key thing, I suppose, for the minute is my tour, speaking in Dublin on the 18th of April, hopefully, fingers crossed. And so people can still get tickets for that from my website. Go on the website and read what it's about and who it's for, and feel free to kind of drop me a message about those kind of things. So yeah, those are the main places to kind of, if anyone wants to follow up with any questions, or just get me as an influence in their life of kind of evidence-based information. I always say this, like, nutrition's a journey. Don't try and conquer it kind of after one podcast or day one. It's just like, people what do you fill your Instagram feed with? Generally it should be cute stuff and positive information, not flipping, it's like, oh, I'm going to follow all these amazing fitness models and just make me feel worse. Don't do that.
I think I've unfollowed pretty much every fitness person. Well, not everyone, but from people you might have followed for years and never thought too much about it. Like, it's not having that in your feed is liberating. But yes, I think Instagram is probably the best. Everything is sourced out from there. That will be linked up in the show notes, guys. And Martin, thank you very much for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
2 years' time, back again.
Yeah, great.